As Trump continues to surge in the polls, today we're going to be taking a look at the 2024 electoral map based on the newest poll conducted in every single state to see where Harris and Trump stand on the path to 270 electoral votes. And we're going to do this a little bit differently. We're not just going to start off out west. We're actually going to begin on the East Coast and fill in the states based on when polls close, so you can see how the map will actually fill in on election night. And so at 7 p.m. Eastern time, polls will close in the first 6 states. These states will be filled in at the very beginning, many of them immediately. Donald Trump is easily going to win Indiana, Kentucky, and South Carolina. There's no doubt these are going to be solid red states, while Kamala Harris is going to win Bernie Sanders' home state of Vermont. Vermont is the most liberal state in the entire country. However, Georgia and Virginia are going to be significantly more competitive. Georgia went to Joe Biden in the last election, but that was the only time Democrats have won the Peach State in the last 3 decades. And considering Biden's tiny margin of victory when Democrats were in a very favorable position nationwide, it will not be too difficult for Trump to win this state back. Georgia is still fundamentally a red state. Trump won it by a 5-point margin just 8 years ago. And looking at the latest poll between Harris and Trump, Donald Trump leads by 1%. He's coming back. There's no doubt he is the clear favorite in Georgia, and so the state is going to be tilt Republican on our map. Virginia is also going to be very competitive despite Biden's 10-point victory in the 2020 election. Kamala Harris is not going to get anywhere near a 10-point margin. In fact, if Joe Biden had stayed in the presidential race, he probably would have lost Virginia entirely. But with Harris now having replaced him, the vice president leads by 3 points in the 2 most recent polls, so it's going to barely be a lean blue state. But really, if you're a Democrat, this is not where you want your party to be. Kamala Harris is barely ahead. This is within the margin of error in a state that your party won by a double-digit margin in just the last election. So Virginia will barely be lean blue. It'll definitely be one to watch. Next up at 7:30, we have polls closing in 3 states. Voting will end in Ohio, West Virginia, and North Carolina. Right off the bat, West Virginia is the 2nd most Republican state in the country. It's easily going to go to the former president. While Ohio generally would have taken quite a while to call, that is no longer the case anymore. The Buckeye State is a Republican state. Governor Mike DeWine was reelected by a 20-point margin in 2022, and of course, Trump carried the state by 8 points in the 2020 election. He's probably going to win it by a double-digit margin this time around. Looking at the newest poll from the state, there it is. Trump leads by 10%, and this is according to Emerson College and The Hill, which does tend to lean to the left. So Ohio is going to be the first likely state on our map, and it will go in favor of the former president. North Carolina is also going to be a key state. It's one of the 7 most competitive states in the country. However, Trump did win the Tar Heel state in both 2016 and 2020. It's the only battleground that he won in both of the last 2 elections, and today he's on track to win it for a 3rd time. Trump leads by 3%. Kamala Harris hasn't led in a poll for over 2 weeks now. The former president is no doubt the favorite in North Carolina. North Carolina is still very much a red state, just like Georgia, and it will go in favor of Donald Trump. It will be lean on our map. Half an hour later at 8 p.m., we will have our largest poll closing of the night with 211 electoral votes. A lot of key states here. Pennsylvania, arguably the most important swing state on the map. We also have Texas and Florida, which will give Trump a huge boost. So we're going to fill in the solid states first. Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, all going to go red, as well as Missouri and Oklahoma, while Kamala Harris is no doubt the favorite in Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, and the District of Columbia. She's also probably going to win New Jersey and Delaware, but the margins there are going to be slightly closer, and Illinois right now will also be a likely blue state. She's going to win it by just under that 15-point threshold. Before I continue, only 16% of you guys are actually subscribed, so please take the time to subscribe right now for more content like this leading up to the election in November. And follow me on Twitter for daily political updates. Link in the description below. Moving on now to the remaining states we have that are going to be a lot more competitive. We're going to begin in the South, first with Florida, a state that used to be so very important to the nominees of both parties because it was actually winnable for the Democrats. The last time it went blue was in 2012 when Obama carried it by less than 1%. It was the only tilt state on the map. In 2016, it was decided by a tilt margin margin once again, but this time in favor of the GOP. 4 years later in 2020, nobody thought Trump was going to win Florida, but he actually did better than he did in 2016. And so the state has only shifted even more to the right over the last 4 years. Ron DeSantis won his re-election as governor by nearly 20 points. There's no way Kamala Harris even stands a chance here. That's why she's not even trying at all. Kamala Harris is behind by 4 points in the most recent poll. In the end, Trump can probably win by 7 to 10 points. This poll was conducted by Emerson College and The Hill, which does definitely tend to lean to the left. And so on our map, Florida is going to be lean red, but in the end, it'll probably go to the former president by a likely margin at the very minimum. We also have Texas, which has traditionally been a red state. Trump is going to win it for a third time in a row. He leads by 3 points in the most recent poll, but this is really the weakest poll we've seen for him over the last 2 months. And this poll, once again, conducted by Emerson College and The Hill. Honestly, he's going to do a lot better than whatever The Hill says. And so on our map, it's going to be lean red, but in the end, just like Florida, these are going to be 2 likely Republican states. They are not competitive, and they're going to give Trump a big electoral college boost, 70 electoral votes between them. Moving up to the Northeast, we have 2 other relatively competitive states. We'll begin in New Hampshire, a state Trump almost won in 2016. He lost the Granite State to Clinton by less than half a percentage point. Nobody thought that was possible, but he made New Hampshire a competitive state. And today, the vice president does lead by 5 points in the most recent poll, but you do have to consider that these polls almost always overestimate the Democrats. And so Harris plus 5, honestly, she's going to win by 3 to 4 points at the very most. Trump definitely has a chance here. Kamala Harris was campaigning here just a few days ago, right before the first presidential debate between the two. That really shows you how important it is to Harris to hold on to a state where she honestly is not doing that well. New Hampshire is going to be lean blue. Now, up in Maine, this state will also probably be decided by a lean margin. Joe Biden won it by 9 points in 2020. The most recent poll we have from Maine, it's honestly a really terrible poll. Harris leads by 17 points. There's no way she's going to double Biden's margin. In the first district, she's up by 28, and in the second, she leads by 5. Trump is going to win the second district. He won it in both 2016 and 2020. He is going to win it for a third time, but since we're basing this map off of the most recent poll, we are going to follow it. The state of Maine as a whole will be solid blue along with the first district, and the second district is going to be lean in favor of the Democrats. And finally, we're left with Pennsylvania. The Keystone State is the most important state on the map. Its 19 electoral votes are going to be critical for both candidates, although it's definitely less important for Trump. If Kamala Harris wins Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Michigan, if Trump wins Pennsylvania along with North Carolina and Georgia, which he is very likely to do, Trump would still get over 270 electoral votes, and you'll see that in just a few moments when we get the rest of the map filled in. So Kamala Harris cannot win the election without Pennsylvania, but unfortunately for her, Trump is doing much better in the state than he was just 2 weeks ago. I mean, if you look at the polling at the end of August, there were a lot of them that showed Harris up by small margins, but now Trump has taken the lead back. According to the most recent poll, he leads by 1%. A previous poll had him up by 2. There's no doubt Trump is the favorite. He's also ahead in the betting markets now. The Keystone State is going to be tilt red on our map. This is a pretty terrible sign for the Harris campaign now that Pennsylvania is slipping away. At 8:30, we have one poll closing. It's going to be in Arkansas. There's no doubt Trump is going to win it. 6 electoral votes going to the former president. At 9 p.m., though, we have another big poll closing. 117 electoral votes worth of states. Key states like Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, all up for grabs. Also Minnesota and New York. Starting off for Trump, he's easily going to win in the Dakotas as well as Wyoming, Kansas, Louisiana, along with all of Nebraska except the second district. In that second district, we only have one poll. Kamala Harris leads by 5 points. It's going to be lean blue for now, but it can definitely still go to Trump. Now we have the remaining states here. Only one of them is going to be safe for the vice president, and that will be New York. According to the most recent poll, she leads by 17 points, but honestly, it is much more likely that she'll win by less than that 15-point margin, as every other poll has shown her leading by a lesser margin. Just look at the margin that Biden won the Empire State by in 2020. He won it by 23 points, and this is the polling you're seeing right now for Kamala Harris in one of the bluest states in the the country. If this doesn't show you that Trump is in a much better place nationwide than he was 4 years ago, I don't know what will. So New York is going to be solid blue on our map, but just barely. Down in Colorado, though, we don't have any polling here. It's probably going to be a likely blue state or possibly even lean. Harris is going to win by around a 7-point margin, despite Biden carrying it by double that margin in 2020. In New Mexico, though, we do have some polls. Kamala Harris leads by 7 in the most recent one, so it's barely going to be a likely blue state. But Democrats are going to have issues in the state in the next few election cycles as Hispanic voters continue to shift towards the GOP. Up in Minnesota, this is Tim Walz's home state, and even with Walz now on the ticket with Kamala Harris, he's a relatively popular governor. Kamala Harris is only ahead by 5 points in the most recent poll, this one conducted by Survey USA. This is one of the best pollsters in Minnesota. And so honestly, things are not looking that great for her. Kamala Harris right now is on track to do worse than Joe Biden did in 2020, even though she is running with the state's literal governor. So Minnesota is going to be lean in favor of the Democrats, and now we're just left with Wisconsin, Michigan, and Arizona. Kamala Harris at this point has to win every single one of them to even have a shot at getting anywhere near 270. We're going to begin with Arizona, which is a state Trump will easily win back. I mean, just look at 2020. Georgia, Arizona, the two closest states in the country. Arizona also hadn't gone blue for over 2 decades before Biden won it 4 years ago. This margin is just so small, and it's so easy for Trump to win the state back, considering he won it by 4 points in 2016. According to the most recent poll, Trump leads by 2%. You did see Harris had a spike last month, but that has clearly ended. Trump leads in 4 out of the last 6 polls. Not a single one of them shows Harris in the lead. So the state of Arizona is going to be lean red, another disastrous blow for the Kamala Harris campaign. Up in the Midwest, though, we have Wisconsin and Michigan. Kamala Harris choosing Tim Walz to be her running mate has given her a slight boost in Wisconsin. As of right now, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are tied in the most recent poll, but in the poll previous, Trump leads by 1%, so it's going to be a tilt red state on our map. There's no doubt Wisconsin's going to be close. She is going to benefit slightly from Tim Walz being her running mate, as Minnesota is neighboring Wisconsin, but in the end, it's probably not going to matter too much because fundamentally, Wisconsin is the most conservative out of all 3 of these blue wall states. And to finish off the states at this 9 p.m. poll closing, we have the Wolverine state of Michigan, 15 electoral votes. This is a state Kamala Harris must win because if there's any swing state she's going to win first, it's going to be Michigan. Michigan is the most liberal out of all of the competitive states. She does lead, though, by 1% in the most recent poll, but there's a lot of doubt because if you look at 2020 polling, Joe Biden led by 8 points in Michigan. He eventually won it by less than 3. In Wisconsin, the polling error was even worse in favor of Joe Biden. And if you look at the odds of victory in Michigan, this is on Polymarket. Kamala Harris at one point had a 2 in 3 chance just 3 weeks ago. Now, it's basically 50-50 between her and Donald Trump, and if Michigan is a toss-up, basically it's almost guaranteed that Trump is going to win virtually every other swing state. So Michigan right now is going to be a tilt blue state, but just barely. Fast forward an hour and polls will close in these 4 states. Only one of them is going to be even remotely competitive. Trump is easily going to win Utah. Iowa's going to be likely red. And in Montana, the former president leads by a solid margin in virtually every poll conducted. In Nevada, though, this is the final competitive state left on our map. Kamala Harris right now is 1 for 7 in terms of the 7 key states, which are Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. And in Nevada, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are tied in the most recent poll, but the previous poll shows Trump leading by 1%. He is back. He is the favorite on Polymarket. There's no doubt that he is going to flip a state he has never won before. Nevada is shifting to the right. They elected a Republican governor in 2022, and in 2016, Clinton won the silver state by 2.4%. When the entire country shifted to the left in 2020, Joe Biden won the state by the exact same margin, which means that Nevada did not move with the rest of the country, moved against it, and it moved in favor of the Republicans. And so Nevada right now is going to be a tilt red state in favor of Donald Trump. An hour later at 11 p.m. on the East Coast, we're going to see the polls close on the West Coast states along with Idaho. In Kamala Harris's home state of California, she's going to win by a solid margin, while Oregon is currently a 5-point race between her and Trump, and in Washington, the vice president leads by 14. So Washington is going to be likely blue, Oregon lean blue, and California the only solid blue state bordering the Pacific, while Idaho will obviously go in favor of Donald Trump by at least 20 to 30 points.